can just be a friendship.
That's left open for us to decide.
Exactly.
Which is contrary to what the culture would say right now, right?
You're right.
The culture would say, oh, you've got feelings there. Well, that's only one thing. Can only mean one thing.
Yeah.
What are you doing holding back? Or move away from it. That can't exist here.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Hey, and welcome to this week's episode of Living Fullness. I am Stina, Constantine, and joining me on the podcast is Father Sean Byrnes. Every week, you'll hear us chat about a range of topics from virtue to relationships, comments on cultural shifts, and lessons that we're learning as we get along. So we're so excited to have you join us. So sit back and enjoy being part of a conversation with a couple of friends. Hey, Padre, how you going?
Very, very well. Thank you, Stina. How are you?
I am doing well.
That is the way. What you been up to?
Trying to get this podcast thing happening because we are on episode 1 of season 3.
I messaged you. I'm like, are we recording today?
Yes, it is in my diary. Has been in my diary for a couple of weeks.
Okay. So, very good.
We are here.
We are here. And
How
it is
exciting.
good to be.
Yes.
Yeah.
We've just finished recording a bit of a behind the scenes thing with and for our Patreon community exclusively.
If you'd like to see what that scene was, come and join Patreon.
Yeah, 100%.
So, what is episode number 1?
Yeah, on this first episode, I thought it would be a good idea for us to kind of go back to the roots of why we even started this podcast. You know, it was around friendship, but also to pull apart a little bit more something that we talked about last year, or maybe even in the first season. We talked about friends in motion.
Which was like back in 2019 or 2020.
Yeah. So having a little bit of a chat now about attraction.
Okay. So when we talk about attraction, normally we're talking about romantic attraction. But it's also worth noting that we're in fact attracted to our friends as well. Like our friends obviously have something attractive in them, otherwise they wouldn't be our friends. And what's interesting about that is that the points that we find attractive in our friends will often be the points that then lead us to something more than a friendship, sort of a more romantic relationship. That there is something attractive in that person that I think is makes that person perhaps a fit for a relationship in marriage, or that in fact it would be it'd be great to pursue a relationship on a deeper level with that person.
Yeah. Which, if that sounds like, whoa, what? What did he just say?
Right.
Just take a deep breath.
It's okay.
It's okay.
Chill.
We're going to walk through this.
Okay. I'm not saying that the next person you find attractive is the person that you need to go and marry or something like that.
Nor that if you find your friend attractive, that therefore that person needs to become your spouse. That's not what you're saying. But if we were to look at it the other way too, what you're also saying is that really your spouse should also possess the qualities of a good friend, of someone that you would find attractive or attracted to as a good friend.
Exactly. And I think this is where the Swaffords talk about friends in motion.
Yeah.
Right? Is this recognition that friendship will not always look the same. Is that sometimes friendship is actually going to grow into something more, or it can grow into a friendship which is just a friendship.
Yeah.
But with nothing further than that.
Yeah. Nothing romantic than that.
Nothing further in terms of romance. But it's often often a friendship may lead to a romantic relationship, and maybe that romantic relationship doesn't last.
Yes.
And so then that friendship has to go back to something else. So in that sense, we have this.
And that's the thing about relationships, right? Is that they don't stay stagnant.
Right. They're not stagnant. They're not static. Exactly right. So why is it then that sometimes when we find ourselves attracted to someone else, particularly when we sort of sense that there may be more of a romantic possibility here, why is it that we tend to sit on the fence with those emotions? Why is it that we tend to sit on the fence with that possibility that, okay, there's actually something that's drawing me into into the possibility of a deeper relationship with this person? Yet we tend to sit on the fence in that. Like, oh, I don't want to broach this. I don't want to have a look at that. Like, what is it that makes us do that?
Yeah.
And I say us, obviously.
Yeah, us as humans.
Us as humans.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, I mean, one of the things that jumps to me straight away is vulnerability.
Yeah.
I mean, the very first place, if we have to be able to acknowledge, if we want to acknowledge that, hey, there is something here that's drawing me to my friend that is more than what I've been experiencing in this relationship, well, the first thing we have to do is to be vulnerable enough to admit that, like one to ourselves, to actually be able to go, okay, that's real. That's happening. That's there. Okay, that wasn't there before. Now what do I want to do with that?
Right.
But to actually be able to admit that, first of all, to ourselves. And then if we choose to, then to be able to admit that to someone else, that takes a lot of bravery.
It takes a bit, doesn't it? It takes a bit.
Bravery, honesty, the works.
Right. Exactly right. And so in all this, I think it's important to realize a few things. Firstly, the idea that if I acknowledge that there is something attractive in a friend, that it just vitiates the possibility of a friendship, that's not true. That's not true. Like, it takes more than just a couple of qualities that we find attractive for a romantic attraction to actually develop. You know, if we just think about attractiveness in general, what it means is that there is a quality that attracts me to this person. The nature of that attraction is not yet qualified. You know, all it means is that there is actually something attractive in this person that I am drawn to. And what that might be defined as is it doesn't need to be romantic. It can just be a friendship. So
that's left open for us to decide.
Exactly.
Which is contrary to what the culture would say right now, right?
Too right.
The culture would say, oh, you've got feelings there. Well, that's only one thing. Can only mean one thing.
Yeah.
What are you doing holding back? Or move away from it. That can't exist here.
Right. Exactly. And the other thing is, we're not doomed to act on attraction. You know, so when attraction is present, in some sense, we need not do any other thing other than thank God for the gift, which is the beauty of the human person. You know, and for the gift of femininity or masculinity. And I would say that perhaps that's unless it's clearly romantic attraction.
Yes.
Right. So if it's romantic attraction, I think we have to kind of be willing to go out on a limb and to say, these are some feelings that I have. Why? Because if I don't do that, then there's something that's not quite transparent and honest in the friendship. There's this feeling that I have of romantic attraction, of I feel like there's something more here, but I'm not saying it. And so there's the possibility that unrequited love can develop in this thing, and even something as unhealthy as obsession can develop out of this thing. So I think it's actually important that where there is that okay, there's actually romantic attraction here, that it's important that I bring that to the table, because it on a number of levels. First of all, is it appropriate that this romantic attraction exists? Right? And if it's there, then I need to actually declare that and be like, okay, you know what? I have a romantic attraction here, and that may not be an appropriate thing. If I'm a married man, if I'm a priest, like, okay, hang on a second, this isn't an appropriate thing, so I need to step back. Like in defense of the friendship that we have, we actually need to talk about how we move forward here, because there's a romantic attraction. If it's a romantic attraction, I think it is actually important to say, I have to declare this thing, so that there's the possibility of recognizing we need to move forward in a different way. There's the possibility of the romantic attraction being reciprocated. There's the possibility of okay, let's think about that. There's numerous possibilities that can erupt from that, depending on what the circumstances are and what the relationship is.
But it needs to be brought to the table for that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And also too, when we say romantic attraction, we're talking about something that's not just been like a fleeting thought that's happened once. Right? It's not like, oh, that particular person just did something or said something that I found a little bit more attractive than usual.
Yes.
So now all of a sudden I have a romantic attraction to them, and I have to declare it because
Padre
said I have to.
Yes, Father said I must declare my romantic attraction. It's like, whoa, chill. Like, just take some time and think about this, consider this. You know.
Absolutely. Take stock of your thought. Yeah. But also, sit and discern, is this what's happening here? Is this just a one-off that just happened just then? Or has this been happening a bit more?
Yeah, too right.
Then, okay, maybe something else is going on here that's a bit more frequent, a bit more tangible, a bit more set than just a once-off thought.
Too right. And so at this point, I kind of hear you all declaring with one accord, but Father, it's risky. You know? So,
Yeah.
and well, yeah, of course it is.
Yeah.
Of course it is. I mean, love requires risk. But the thing is, if we're willing to risk it, then some pretty awesome stuff can actually come out of that risk. Like two mature people are able to have sort of conversations with courage, knowing that those conversations will actually preserve the possibility of that friendship, even if that friendship looks different.
Yeah.
Even if it doesn't look the same as what it looked before, it actually preserves the possibility that a friendship can exist if that conversation takes place. Because let's say not the worst. Let's say the romantic attraction isn't reciprocated. All right, the romantic attraction isn't reciprocated, and that friendship that you have is not going to look the same thing moving forward. That's not necessarily a bad thing.
No,
it's
that's
okay
right.
that friendship looks different. You've not lost something irretrievably. There's not something that is irrevocably gone forever. Yes, this will look different for a time, and that is okay.
Yeah.
And look, we often hear it said, but what if our romance ruins our friendship? Romance done well with maturity and love guiding actions and emotions may change friendship, but it won't ruin it. And this really does accord with the idea of friends in motion. If we cease to think of friendship as merely a static thing, and instead to think of it as something which is in motion, something open to change and growth, then these conversations and decisions become much easier to face.
Yeah. What you're also saying there is to also have some trust in your friendship, in the existing friendship, that your friendship actually can outlast a little bump in the road.
Right.
Like, let's not blow this thing out of proportion. It doesn't need to be blown out of proportion.
Exactly.
So having some faith and some trust in what you've actually built. But at the same time, that also begs the question, what if you don't actually have such a solid relationship? Then maybe it makes sense to be worried that your friendship might fall apart because, hey, maybe the foundations of a good friendship aren't there yet.
Absolutely.
Well, now we actually need to reassess. Or do I want to grow in a deeper friendship with this person before pursuing something romantic? Or do I just want to jump in with whatever attractions that are going on right now? But either way, it's a conversation
that's right.
that needs to be had.
And we're not going to provide you with a, here's what you do. Like that's not our job. Our job isn't to say, well, you do this or you don't do this. It's just highlighting the fact that a conversation needs to happen here.
Yeah, exactly.
For the sake of clarity, transparency, all of that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The other thing to take into consideration is that just because there is a friendship doesn't mean that you have to then pursue a romantic relationship.
No. Right.
So if someone then, asks that person out, asks you out, and you've been friends with that person for however many months or years, that doesn't necessarily mean, well, now I have to pursue a romantic relationship with that person. Like, we also need to take into consideration that, hey, maybe this is not the right season for you or for them or for both, one of you or both. Maybe you're not as attracted to them as they are to you.
Right.
Like, maybe that's something that you need to consider. Or maybe you know that there is something coming that is going to shift things for you drastically.
Yeah.
So maybe you need to take that into consideration too, or at least make that known to that other person. But just because you're friends and this romantic attraction comes up doesn't mean you have to pursue a romantic relationship.
No, you're spot on. There's nothing making you enter a relationship. You're free to say, no, look, this is just a friendship, and that's where we're headed.
Yeah.
And which is contrary to one of the things that is present in some Christian circles is this idea that friendship between a man and a woman will always and invariably end in a romantic relationship. That if it's not headed in that direction, then it's not fulfilling its purpose. It's not fulfilling its function. Yeah. And to this, I think we'd have to say no.
Yeah.
No, we disagree with that wholesale. Yeah. Where if the only thing that men and women are able to enter into is a romantic relationship, then that precludes any other relationship, which we know is just not. It's not true. It's healthy boundaries enable good, healthy relationships. And healthy boundaries between men and women. Things like hanging out in a group and stuff like that enables decent friendships to live and between men and women. So, yeah.
Not to mention it's a setup for failure in the long run too. I mean, imagine spending your first couple of decades of your life or a few decades of your life pursuing every relationship with the opposite sex, thinking that that's going to end in marriage.
Right.
Well, what are you going to do once you're married? That's you've been training to do for the last 2.5, 3 decades.
Exactly.
It's not going to shift overnight.
Exactly.
That's quite dangerous.
That's right. It's quite a dangerous notion, isn't it? Yeah. There's one last point that would be worthwhile sort of covering is the difference between romantic attraction and physical attraction. I think romantic attraction should be, not that it always is necessarily, but it should be about the whole person. You know, I think sometimes romantic attraction can be a little bit of too flirtatious, if you know what I mean.
Sure.
No commitment, sort of very fluffy, very sort of kind of highly emotional, stuff.
Yeah.
So it can be that, but it shouldn't be.
No.
It shouldn't be.
No.
A genuine romantic attraction ought to be an attraction to the whole person, and it ought to be a mature attraction, not a childish attraction, right?
Doesn't mean you can't have fun.
It doesn't mean you can't. No. It's not. It's right.
I can just hear. I can just
hear.
You know, a 13-year-old me listening to that would have gone, "Oh, what a bore."
Yeah. True, entirely. So, no, it doesn't mean you can't have fun. It doesn't mean you can't have fun. But it just means that there needs to be something deeper than a fleeting emotion that sort of is guiding the sort of relationship that we have and sort of guiding the attraction that we're feeling. It shouldn't just be fleetingness. There should actually be something deeper going on there. Which means that our intellects need to be kind of engaged in that attraction. You know. So what then is physical attraction? How's it related to romantic attraction? Well, physical attraction is a physiological response. You know, it's a response to the external stimuli of seeing someone that's beautiful, and having that physical attraction. And it's actually a really important kind of attraction.
Yeah,
like it's quite important to be sort of physically attracted to the person that you're going to spend your life with. I've heard it said, "Oh, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. All that matters is that this person's virtuous. All that matters." Actually, it matters.
Yeah,
it matters.
Yeah,
if you find the person that you're going out with, or the person that if you find someone to be unattractive, it's going to make life very, very difficult. You know, it's particularly in terms of it makes the whole coming together as husband and wife rather difficult. If there's absolutely no physical attraction there.
Yeah. Physical attraction is not important at all.
I've heard it said in some circles that physical attraction isn't important at all. And I think this is incorrect. Physical attraction actually is important because the bodily dimension is actually part of who we are. It's not just the shell, right? So if I'm not physically attracted to a person, it's actually part of that person that I don't find attractive. And it's kind of an essential part of that person because we are body, soul composites. Our bodies aren't just shells housing a soul. That's not Christian thought. So the physical attractiveness is actually an important part of a romantic relationship. So we do need that. But the physical attractiveness thing must not be a physical attraction to parts.
Yep.
It must not be a physical attraction to parts. And so a romantic attraction and a physical attraction must kind of go together, where there is this attraction to the whole person, body and soul. Everything about this person, is well, not everything because we're all imperfect. Yeah. But this person I find attractive. Yeah. You know, and so romantic attraction and physical attraction, they really do go hand in hand, and they kind of wind up being really joined at the hip. Yeah. Because if you're going to be attracted to the whole person, then the body is part of that. Yeah. So it's important that we are actually attracted physically.
And I mean, to the circles that would say, oh, no, you don't need the physical attraction. All you need to look for is a virtuous person. Well, actually, it's very hard to be a virtuous person in relationship with someone if you're not accepting them for who they are as a whole.
Right.
It's almost impossible if you're actually deliberately ignoring one aspect of who they are, a very important and prominent aspect of who they are.
That's right.
In that same breath, though, there is such a thing as disordered desires of attraction.
Yes.
We can be obsessed with certain things and find those attractive and find other things that are, okay and beautiful, unattractive.
Yeah.
But that means having to check in to make sure that we're not obsessed with a particular thing. That goes for men and women.
That's right. And look, pornography is making this quite difficult.
Right.
It warps standards of beauty and holds up a CGI standard of beauty, a computer-generated standard of beauty for a real, true beauty. They did some research, and they put two images in front of men. It was one was a real woman, and one was a computer-generated image. And men were saying that they found more attractive the computer-generated image.
Bum, bum.
Bum, bum. Right. That's a problem. It's representative of beauty being distorted, or our sense of beauty being distorted.
Yes.
And so we sort of need to be careful, as you say, that we don't have those disordered desires kind of informing our physical attraction.
Yeah.
And that, look, if you find yourself in that spot, look, please remember a couple of things. God loves you very much.
Yeah.
God loves you very much. And there is a way out of that.
Yeah.
There is a way out of that. Sometimes it takes a bit of therapy, takes a bit of time, takes a bit of courage. But honestly, there's a way out of that. And it takes some prayer too, let me tell you. Yeah.
But even if it's not someone who's struggling with pornography, even just the beauty standards in general that we have in society can be problematic.
Yeah, true.
For men and women.
Absolutely.
Really problematic. But this is also where the attraction checklist comes in too, because you may not consider yourself to have an addictive concern or an issue or problem like pornography, but perhaps you're someone who goes, well, I'm only attracted to this particular height, this particular weight, this particular figure, this particular hair color.
Right.
So therefore, I can only possibly go out with people with that particular description because that's what I'm attracted to. And you're saying physical attraction is important.
Therefore, my checklist must be met.
My checklist is validated. Well, hang on. Just because we find certain traits, again, like you said before, it comes back to the whole person. If we're pulling things apart and looking at parts only and being drawn to parts only, we have a problem. Not to mention that it's a little bit weird.
Right.
It's a little bit weird.
It's entirely weird.
We can't create a Sims person.
No.
And, hope that person becomes the spouse that we end up with. So that's also something to bear in mind too, is that checklist that we might have.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Being open to the fact that you could be attracted to someone not on that checklist.
Absolutely.
And still find them physically attractive.
Too right. I think just as a way of summing up, remember that attraction doesn't mean that you have to literally go and seek romantic union with every single person that you come across.
Please don't.
But it's okay to have these conversations with friends and say, look, I'm if you have a friend of the opposite sex, to say, look, I'm experiencing an attraction to you, and here's what this attraction looks like, and to have that discussion, have that conversation. It's really, really powerful, and it can lead to new doors opening. So don't be frightened.
Yes. Yeah. Well said. So that takes us to truth, beauty, and goodness. What do we got this year, Padre?
Well,
Episode 1. Let's start this big.
Okay. So I was summoned to a nursing home. Summoned, it sounds like I came out of a portal. I was asked to go to a nursing home, and there was a lovely lady who was passing away, and I got to sort of just sit down with her. She was still conscious, still aware, and she was she was struggling with, whether or not she could be forgiven for various things, and whether God would be merciful on her and stuff like that. And it was so awesome to be able to kneel down right next to her and to be able to say, well, Jesus loves you. He forgives you. We're going to go through the whole of the church's sacraments and liturgy right now. He loves you. He forgives you. And you're about to get the assurance of that reality right here. To see the calm and the acceptance of what was coming next, to see that come over her was so epic and so beautiful. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. How about yourself?
Well, to start with, this is a book that I picked up at the end of last year. It's called Everlasting Love, and it's a book of single-page short poetry written by Devona Fiana. She's a Christian woman who's just kind of taken the perspective of almost like an older sister and just assuring you, every page assuring you of God's love. Like, God loves you like this, and she paints like a bit of a picture, or, all the things that you might be worrying about. He cares about all those things. So every day, every morning, as part of like the way of ending my morning prayer, has been to read one of those pages. So highly recommend for anyone who might be going through a bit of a rough patch perhaps, or just needs like a little bit of an extra boost of a day, like just to be able to read a page. So we'll link that in the description box.
It is the end of this episode.
Yeah, we will catch you again next week for another episode in this season 3 of the Living Fullness podcast. So we'll see you then. Till then, no, I love a press.
God bless.